in secret Nazi documents, later uncovered by the Allies, consisted of letters exchanged between the German security service and its agents about the former British King Edward VIII. These documents reveal an unexpectedly close relationship between the Duke of Windsor and the Nazi regime, a connection far closer than previously believed.
When the attack comes, it is the very weak spots that the Duke has identified which the Germans actually attack.
Edward abdicated the throne in 1936, after he reigned for only 326 days, one of the shortest reigns in British history, ending when he allegedly abdicated to marry Wallis Simpson, while no one ever questioned the Duke's true beliefs or underlying motives. New evidence, however, tells a very different story.
The Duke definitely believes that continued severe bombing would make England ready for peace.
Many historians argue that he was forced out because of his Nazi affiliations and convictions.
This is a man who will stop at nothing to usurp the throne, even if it requires the death of his own brother.
It appears he planned to return, depose his own brother as king, and have himself crowned by the Nazis upon their invasion of Great Britain. The newly discovered documents expose just how far the former king was willing to go to reclaim power, how British authorities concealed his actions, and hid that he betrayed his own country. This is History with Magnus. Remember to subscribe. In 1937, the Duke traveled to Germany and met with Hitler. While there, he was given a sightseeing tour by the Germans, who proudly showcased their factories and other industrial achievements. Photographs of him with Hitler soon circulated around the world, a major propaganda victory for the Nazi leader. During a visit to the Totenkopf division, reports emerged that the Duke performed a Nazi salute, although his spokesperson later claimed it was merely a courteous gesture. The Duke even declared to Hitler that he possessed no English blood whatsoever, insisting he was entirely German. It is interesting to note that the British royal family originally hailed from Germany as the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, only to change its name to Windsor during World War I after one of their many castles. In a personal letter dated October 1937, sent to Hitler to express gratitude for the tour he was given, and the Duke even wrote the letter in German. He had married Simpson with the expectation that she would receive the customary title of Duchess, a privilege usually granted to the spouse of a royal. However, the British royal family refused her that honor, a slight that tormented them both throughout their lives and drew them even closer together, making them feel a sense of it's us versus them. Not long after being replaced as king by his brother, Edward married Wallis Simpson in 1937. Their wedding took place in France, where they were lent a castle arranged by a man named Charles Bideau, a decision that would later have serious repercussions. None of Edward's family attended the ceremony, leaving the Duke feeling isolated and deeply disappointed. Bideau, a fervent Nazi, had even secured a team of servants for the couple. These servants were, in fact, informants for the Nazis, keeping a meticulous record of all that occurred within the castle. The Duke was notorious for prefacing his remarks with "when I was king," a constant reminder of his lost status. In a letter to Minister of State Lord Moyne, he not only decried the injustice he felt, but also complained about his wife being disparagingly labeled as "that woman" in a newspaper article. Divorced from her previous husband and an American by birth, she quickly became seen as the evil witch and one of the most reviled women in England. Edward retained his military rank and honorary positions within the British Army and was assigned as a liaison officer with the British military mission to the French Army. He was tasked with inspecting military forces, though the British government was not entirely trusting. An intelligence officer was sent to monitor his activities. Convinced he was playing a pivotal role, Edward was nonetheless deeply dismayed when all his reports were dismissed as unreliable. Even his warnings about the unprepared French forces were dismissed, something that would later be proven accurate when France was invaded. But Edward had also given the Germans the same information, something that would later be used by the Nazis when they invaded France. His Nazi sympathies were confirmed when he in 1939 delivered a radio speech urging Britain to negotiate peace with Germany, an act that led people to view him as nothing more than a pawn in the Nazi propaganda machine. The recording of this speech was never broadcast by the BBC because it was essentially a call for England to surrender. A few months later, war erupted. While Britain was plunged into food rationing and hardship and faced the grim realities of war, the Duke continued to live a life of luxury and had close contacts with the German Nazi regime.
The captured German documents are clearly one of the most important sources. And it's not just the odd telegram. This collection is riddled with references to his hope of being restored to the throne by the Germans.
In January 1940, the German ambassador sent a secret letter to Berlin regarding the Duke.
Through personal relationships, I might have the opportunity to establish certain lines leading to the Duke of Windsor. As of course you know, W is a member of the French military mission with the French Army Command. He does not, however, feel entirely satisfied with this position.
The Duke remained in Paris, living a life of luxury while trying to impress others by speaking about England and its defenses. The German agent Charles Bedeau reported everything the Duke said back to Berlin, and when France was invaded, the Germans reportedly used the Duke's information to plan their attack.
When the attack comes, it is the very weak spots that the Duke has identified which the Germans actually attack.
It is uncertain how many people died in the assault on France, but thousands perished as a result of the Duke's intelligence. When Churchill became Prime Minister, he applied pressure on the Duke by sending him a letter threatening a court-martial if he did not obey orders. He threatened a former king with imprisonment, an unprecedented move in British history. After the successful invasion, the Duke was then granted permission to leave France by the Nazis and traveled to neutral Portugal, where he continued his luxurious lifestyle, even as Britain became the target of German blitz bombing. Amidst the chaos of the world, the Duke dined at exclusive restaurants, played golf, and mingled with the social elite. In the Portuguese archives, a journalist uncovered reports detailing the lives of those close to him, revealing that they were surrounded by elite families such as Baron Rothschild and many of Portugal's wealthiest families. The Duke maintained his own staff of 12 servants, and, of course, a chef. In July, he visited Ricardo Silva, who owned a small bank which during the war grew into Portugal's largest bank by collaborating with the Nazis. Santo willingly reported on the Duke to the Nazi regime and gave some shocking information.
Edward wanted to come back as a Nazi-installed leader. It's clear that his pro-Nazi sentiments continue to be as strong as ever.
The letters found after the war makes it clear that the Duke was willing to do anything to get back to the throne of England.
I think it's one of the most shocking documents that I found in my research. He characterizes himself as a firm supporter of a peaceful arrangement with Germany. And then this bit. The Duke definitely believes that continued severe bombing would make England ready for peace.
These statements are clearly illegal and should have made it clear to all that the Duke was a traitor.
Here is the former king of Great Britain saying that if you bomb Britain, bomb his family, bomb his country, that's the best way to bring them to sue for peace.
That is exactly what the Germans did. They even bombed Buckingham Palace, targeting his family, but missed by only a few meters.
Let's look at it in personal terms. This is the Duke encouraging the Germans to subjugate the British. This is a man who will stop at nothing to usurp the throne, even if it requires the death of his own brother.
Churchill intervened, insisting that the Duke be appointed governor of the Bahamas in the Gulf of Mexico, and in this way be out of sight and out of mind. This exile, as it truly was, somewhat resembles Napoleon's banishment 125 years earlier to the island of St. Helena. But with a major difference, the Duke continues to live a life of luxury, albeit in a place where his capacity to harm Britain was diminished. The Germans was extremely disappointed to lose their asset. However, he still maintained contact with the Germans' regime even after he left, sending a coded message to Santo, declaring that he is willing to return if the opportunity arises.
This document reveals very conclusively that the Duke knew exactly what he was doing and frankly was a traitor to this country. Communications with the enemy during war was against the Treachery Act. He could well have been executed. It seems to have been a case of power at any cost.
Santo then relays this to the Germans, emphasizing that the Duke is fully prepared for a comeback when the time comes. Despite being shunned by the British, he continues his jet-set lifestyle and travels to New York, where he becomes extremely drunk at a party. There, he begins singing German songs, and suddenly he raises his arm in what onlookers perceive as a Nazi salute. It became clear that he was a quintessential Nazi, even as the outcome of the war started to become apparent. The two lovebirds continued to live a life of luxury, sponsored by their wealthy friends and his private fortune. The papers that were found were now going to be made public, although the Duke insisted that they were forgeries fabricated by the Germans. British authorities attempted to downplay the Duke's involvement, arguing that he was under immense pressure and never truly betrayed his own country. They claimed that it was the Germans who tried to deceive him, and even Churchill supported this stance. It would have been far too embarrassing and a monumental scandal if a member of the royal family were revealed as a traitor. It could have been the end of the monarchy in Great Britain. Consequently, the story of the Duke was censored. The Duke never returned to England after the war, spending 35 years in exile. He never set foot in Britain again. So why did the former king betray his country? Many historians argue that he embraced Nazi ideology with fervor, convinced that certain races were inherently superior. The family's racist views are thoroughly documented. For example, during a formal meeting, Prince Philip reportedly demeaned an African leader by comparing him and his people to animals, insinuating that Africans were in dire need of European guidance. Equally shocking are photographs of the former Queen of England alongside her uncle, in which she is seen executing a Nazi salute. When Lady Diana died, the Queen initially refused to lower the flag to half-mast or engage with the mourning publicly. It wasn't until the Prime Minister sternly warned her that such a lack of public emotion could spell the end of the monarchy that she reluctantly joined in the national grief. The controversies persist. Prince Harry has been seen donning Nazi costumes, while the royal family expressed alarm that their children, born to Harry and Meghan, might inherit the wrong skin color, a comment that sent the media into frenzy.
New book is claiming that Prince Charles was the unnamed royal who speculated about the complexion of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's future children.
In another unprecedented move, the current King Charles has designated his new wife as the future queen, despite her lacking royal blood, a first in modern British history. Not even his mother had not conferred such an honor upon her husband Philip, who was given the title of prince. Moreover, Prince Andrew's notorious involvement with underage girls has been documented, leading to an interview about his involvement with the disgraced pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, an interview that has been dubbed the car crash interview. This led to a scandal so severe that his family stripped him of his titles and now forbids him from traveling outside Britain, fearing potential arrest. These incidents collectively paint a picture of a deeply dysfunctional royal family, one that appears utterly detached from the struggles of ordinary citizens, caring only for its own position and power. Edward was unmistakably cut from the same flawed cloth, a spoiled, immature man who carried himself with an air of superiority, convinced he was exempt from the rules and was better and more entitled than everyone else. It's clear that Edward did not abdicate as king out of free will. He was forced to do so by the British because he was an unrepentant Nazi. Over time, this hubris and disregard for any form of accountability wove themselves into the fabric of his personal narrative, ultimately defining his history and legacy. I think Edward's private secretary Alan Lascelles summed up the Duke's life and personality well when he, in a private conversation with MP Harold Nicholson, said, "He was like a child in a fairy tale who has been given every gift except a soul. He was without a soul, and this made him somewhat mad. He never cared for England or the English. He hated his country, and since he had no soul, he did not like being reminded of his duties." Remember to subscribe and put on all notifications so you don't miss my next video about history.